Hey everybody, Professor Dust here. We are back. Part 2 of the research project instructional honors section. We just finished deliverable number 3, which was what to do in terms of data collection. Now we're on to deliverable number 4. So for deliverable number 4, I'm given the opportunity to submit a rough draft. And the rough draft will be due 2 weeks before the final paper is due. And I'm doing this for a few reasons. Number one, 2 weeks seems to be a good amount of time to ensure that you are accountable for at least putting something down on paper. This is a big paper, and if you attempt to do this all in the last week or in the last 3 or 4 days before it's due, it will not be as good of a deliverable as you want it to be. So this is holding you accountable to at least think through what it might look like. It does not need to be in final shape. It can be an outline if you want. I've seen some great final submissions where the group just did a very thorough job putting together an outline of what they planned to put down on paper, and it made sure that they didn't go off and finish the entire paper in the wrong direction, right? So this gives you that opportunity to do that. But I strongly encourage doing the best you can to get as much down on paper in a really rough form, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. I'll give you feedback on whatever you submit to me. The second reason I do this is to prevent the bottleneck that inevitably will occur if all of the groups ask me to do a evaluation 2 days before it's due. I can't. There's too much, there's too many papers, there's too much things I could get into, and I've still got, classes to manage. So it really ensures that I give you high quality feedback at a timetable that's reasonable for everybody involved. So please take advantage of that. It's 20 points pass fail. Everybody's going to get the 20 points if you submit something, anything. But this is my goal. My objective is to hold you accountable to at least getting something down on paper and showing me that you've thought through some of the things that will surface. Inevitably things don't pan out the way you think they should. So always start early. So, okay, that's the rough draft. And then the final draft, which you should be evaluating all of these details when putting together your rough draft, obviously. But your final draft of the paper is worth the remaining 150 points, right? So the first 50, 25% of your grade is a freebie. But now we're into the meat of the assignment. So, number one, put a cover page on there with all the team members. Formatting, please, please, please keep this double-spaced, 12-point font. This is when you submit to academic journals, that's what is required. I give some page recommendations by section, and those are just recommendations. They're just guides. I am not counting off based upon a page count or word count. But I would say that papers that have sections that are well under the page suggestions probably aren't thorough enough. They're not detailed enough. Those that are wildly over the max probably haven't really made good decisions. With any type of writing, it's really important to get to the point and be brief, or you're going to lose your audience, right? So if it's way too long, you probably haven't done a good job of making decisions about what you want to say. You do need to provide a minimum of 10 scholarly references using the journals that are listed in this assignment. Okay, so there was a list of 20 or 30 journals that were top tier, peer-reviewed, social science, journals that are related to organizational behavior. All of your 10 references need to be from one of those journals. Now, you could do as many references as you want, but you have to at least have 10 from those databases. My recommendation is to use those to define your constructs, as well as use those references to support your arguments within your hypotheses, because prior research that is similar to whatever you are evaluating can help build your argument. And 3, using some of those references when you're making managerial recommendations to say, here's what's been done in the past. Here's some evidence to suggest this might help. Okay, the only time you can use quotes, do not use quotes. Please, please, please. The only time you use a quote is if you are defining a variable, specifically saying Schmidt and Schmidt says that leader-member exchange is defined as, and then insert the quote. Do not use quotes for anything else. Paraphrase, put everything into your own words, and then cite it within the text. Let's see, cite your own sources using APA format. You will need a reference page. There's all sorts of database suggestions, or excuse me, citation suggestions for APA format, which is what you should be using. But I'm not super picky about commas and italics or something like that. Okay, so I'm going to show you an example here in a second of what a final paper looks like. But the introduction should be 1 or 2 pages. This is a summary of what you're investigating and why it's important. Don't just list the variables. I want you to tell me a story. This is actually one of my favorite parts to write in papers. This is give me the hook. You know, why do we care about this? Why is it interesting? Why is it important? Hypotheses. You're going to have a minimum of 3 hypotheses. I'll help you hone down these. In some rare circumstances, if your hypotheses are super complex, I might make you do 2. I might make you do 4 if they're too simple. But I will help you come up with what those final hypotheses are. And then within this section, you need to offer theoretical arguments explaining why you think those relationships are the way they are. Why is it that positive relationship between independent variable and dependent variable? Why is there an enhance or diminishing moderating effect on those 2 variables? This is where your research is going to come into play. You're going to use that evidence and use those citations to make solid arguments, but you're also just going to use logic, right? Literally saying, here's the list of these items for this variable. Here's the list of items for this variable. I'm hypothesizing a relationship between the 2. Why is it? What's the logic between those 2 variables that would help me understand why the relationship is there? The method section, about a page, and this is a lot of what the upcoming videos for this project will be all about. Give me some descriptions of the respondents. Tell me what your survey items are, and then reliability. I'll explain what those mean down the road to illustrate that those scales are working the way they should. And then a results page. A lot of the videos will be about how to analyze the results. So some descriptive statistics and correlations, coefficients and statistical significance. Basically, this is showing the degree to which there is a relationship and whether or not that relationship is statistically significant or supported based upon the data that we have. And then illustrating whether or not they are supported or refuted. And then there, in a lot of circumstances, I will ask you through some of the feedback to conduct some supplemental analyses. I might say, hey, drop a few items and then reanalyze it. I might say, hey, also offer a different variation of your hypotheses and test that, and then put that into supplemental analyses to kind of draw the story out some more. And then finally, what I would say is a really, really important part of this project, and you should put a lot of attention here, is tell me what happened in the overall pattern results. Take a step back and say, okay, what does this mean? You know, did this really follow what we thought would happen? And if so, that's great. Most of the times it's yes and no, and then you need to explain why yes and no, and when, and what circumstances. And then based upon those findings, so what? What are we going to do about it? You know, what exactly should managers do differently because they've read your findings, right? Put yourself into the mindset of someone that's doing research for an organization. They've hired you to do this study, and they genuinely want to know, what do I do now? Now it's your job to take all this research and put it into practical terms that an employee or a manager could use in order to do something differently, to be whatever it is, more effective, more efficient, have higher well-being, or whatever it might be. And then make sure you got a reference page in there as well. Let me show you, before I get into some of these other deliverables, let me show you what a paper looks like from a prior semester. So here's their introduction. So 1, 2, 3 paragraphs, 4 paragraphs, 5 paragraphs or so. Then they get right into their hypotheses. They use the formal hypothesis statement. This one was just a simple independent variable to dependent variable. They gave me a nice visual. That's kind of helpful. And then they explained why they thought that was correct. They've actually got this backwards. You want to state the hypothesis after the text, but nonetheless, it still is pretty good. Here's hypothesis 2, also pretty simple, just a direct effect, no moderating variable. And then hypothesis 3, they've got this moderating variable that's supposed to enhance or diminish this relationship. And then they get into the methods. They put together some visuals. They don't have to do that. You don't have to do that as long as you have tables that clearly illustrate what some of these demographics are. They've got an outlay that's kind of nice showing what's going on with the data. Let's see. Then they list the items for each of these specific scales, which is very helpful, as well as the Likert scale that was used. They've got some reporting of the reliability of the scales, and then they get into the results. They've run the analyses, and they're illustrating the correlations and the regressions. This is the moderating relationship, which I'll show you how to do, and it creates a nice little fun output for you, showing that, hey, the moderating variable does have a effect on this direct effect here. And then they offer their discussion that has the managerial implications and the references, and that's it. And then a lot of times you're going to have some appendices or some tables, some supplemental information that are just kind of an output copy and paste from whatever the statistical tool is, whether it's in Excel or whether it's directly from JASP, the software tool that we will be using. Okay, so back to the research project instructions, a few other administrative deliverables that you need to accomplish. So very soon, on the 12th, January 12th, you have to complete this city online training. I discussed this in the syllabus. You have to do this. It takes about an hour to 2 hours. Took me about an hour and 15 minutes. And between you and me, you know, I was paying attention, but not, you know, reading every word as accurately as I probably should. You know, it's really trying to make sure you understand the gist of what you can and can't do, and there's quizzes at the end, and you have to meet a certain grade threshold in order to pass. And it looks like this. When you click on that link, this is Miami University's IRB. You know, you can click this button, city login, and it'll take you to what you need to do. And this takes you to the same place. Click here to register or city login, and it'll walk you through everything you need to do. Once you're done, I show this in the research program. Once you are done with that city training, you've got the little PDF certificate that it lets you download. Then you should click on this shared document, and it will take you to this one. It'll take you to this shared Excel sheet where I want you to fill in your name, your city training completion date, when did you finish the training, your Miami ID, and your email address. Then everybody in the class, once they've done that, then I can send it to Miami's IRB and say, here's an addendum to this ongoing IRB proposal, to make sure everybody knows that, hey, yes, everybody's gone through the training. They are allowed and have done everything they need to do in order to collect new data from live participants. All right, so those are important deliverables you need to do. Here is the grading rubric that I would encourage you to read before you start writing, but then I'd also encourage you to read this once you've maybe submitted your rough draft, and once you've gotten feedback from me, and then after you think you're finally done, go back and read it again and make sure you're hitting each of these sections. I can tell you this now, no one ever only writes one draft of their paper. That does not happen. It's going to take 2, 3, maybe even more overhauls of your entire paper to really make sure that you get this done right. The first draft is kind of a starting point. Really, your first draft will probably be the final draft. At least that's the best papers, right? They've really gone through and they have a critical eye for what they've done, and they've tried to correct things that could be better. So introduction, hypotheses, methods, results, discussion, and then overall, I'm giving you suggestions for what you should be thinking about for each specific section. And then I also put this last point in here is beyond the parameters that are offered here, I really strongly encourage you in using the class terminology that you'll get to if you haven't already, about the dependent variables of OB. I'm not looking for task performance here, where you simply just check the box and you said, okay, I did that. That's all that matters. You know, if you really want to get a high A, you got to come at this from a whole nother mindset of what can I do that is just above and beyond that would prove that, you know, I've really thought beyond the minimum. I've done what is called proactive performance, kind of taken whatever the findings are or the limitations are or the challenges are of this specific project and research question that you were asking and said, I've thought through the next step and the next step and really thought about what this means. or taking this to the other angle of innovative performance. Have I really gone above and beyond to say, I'm doing something different, interesting, creative, and implementing it within this study? I'm giving you creative license to take this to the next level. But if you really want to get those high A's, you can't just check the boxes and put forth a paper that's, it's so-so, it did what you asked, right? When you're out there in the real world, people want to see something unique. They want to see your own flavor. They want to see what you've done beyond what's been done before to really take it to the next level. So I would challenge you to have that mindset as you go through this. So let me take you back to Canvas and show you where all this stuff is. Looks like things are moving slow. There we go. Okay, so this is within the research project final submission. That's where you'll find the research project instructions that I just showed you here. The videos that I'm doing now will be listed here. I'll take you to the modules to make sure you can see where a lot of this stuff is located. So let's see, first thing that's due is research project hypothesis deliverable 1. You'll submit the hypothesis deliverable 1 that I showed you through the system in a Word document. City Online training is also due that Friday the 12th. Let's see, 3 weeks later your scales are due. A couple weeks later your data is due on the 19th. And then you got about 4 weeks until the rough draft is due. And then, 2 weeks later, your final submission is due. So they're embedded within your modules so that you know when to do what. And again, I strongly encourage you to get feedback during this research project rough draft. That'll be instrumental. And that's all we're doing that week is working on that paper. So take those opportunities to spend the time and do it right. And then also you got this buffer week in here that should give you some time to also get a head start on putting together some of those pieces of the puzzle. So that's it. Good luck. There'll be lots more videos to come on how to analyze the data and how to work through each element of the paper. So good luck.